Anthony.
It's October. I'm
It's
Gabby.
Gabby with Poe, and we are voice actors. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful Wednesday. It is the first day, just like Gabby said, of October. Isn't that wild? That is
It
wild.
is, but it's my favorite. It's my
I
absolute
know.
favorite. So I'm
Well,
excited.
you're gonna hate this, but I saw someone post on this said it's time for Christmas. It's like, yay!
Listen, this kills me because now, right, in stores, you can get Halloween stuff as early as July, and the
Mm-hmm.
Christmas stuff starts rolling out in August. So I'm just like, what is
I
going on,
know.
man?
I know.
Crazy.
Wild stuff, but it
Crazy.
is wonderful. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also, hit that bell notification so that when we do go live, post a video, you get notified.
And you can hang out with us.
So
Mm,
we are talking about furthering our conversation on demos.
yep, yep.
So, it's not fun. Um, so today, what are we talking? We're talking about what, Gabby? What are we talking about today?
So, I mean, we talked a lot about, editing and selection. Well, actually, direction. Next up is really talking about editing, right? How to put the final demo together, what it should, yeah, just kind of the nuances of getting it closer to a final presentation.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think a good place to possibly start, for me is, your DAW.
Hmm.
So understanding what your DAW can and can't do, that's an important thing. Basically, how we kind of lay out a demo, if you will. And by the way, everybody you work with is going to be different, but in the case of what we do, think of it as, you know, tracks or layers, right, that we're putting together, right? We have a spot, if you will, one voiceover. So let's say on a commercial demo, you have six different spots, okay,
Hmm.
different reams. And also with that, you're going to have each one of them may have its own piece of music as well as its own sound effects as
Hmm.
well. All of those, can be they're layered together. They're usually layered on tracks, right?
Hmm.
We do this for a variety of reasons. One, we do this to help organize, or the organization is very important in these because each one of these, even though it's together in one demo, they can be also separate.
Hmm.
And we want to be able to also organize it so that we can go back and work on it. So it's nice to put these things on different tracks as opposed to putting them all together
Hmm.
on one or just two tracks. So, from a standpoint of looking, you might have a demo set up where you have loads and loads of different tracks, and you've seen those snapshots of people's screens where there's just like, you know, tons and tons of tracks, and
Hmm.
of course, so they can be color coded and they look all different, and each one of those tracks can also have their own effects
Hmm.
and their own things. So when we're putting something together, the first thing to think about is each one of those spots is unique. It's its own story you're telling, but but they all come together to tell a story. And when we put that together, it is literally in one track after another.
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think there's some rules or things that people should be aware of that are important. So for starters, you don't want big long gaps in between your pieces. Most demos are jump cut style, so it goes very very quickly from one item to the next. About the only deviation from that I would say
Is
is
the
audiobooks.
audiobooks,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
You always want to, or at least this is kind of the pro mentality, is when you're building a demo, you always want to record more of the piece, the individual piece, than you think you're going to need, and then select the best moment from it. And to address what you were saying about, mix and master, each piece needs to be mixed, mastered, affected separately, because a demo is supposed to mirror or mimic what it would sound like if you were taking jobs that you had actually done and compiling a best of together. So you want them to all have their own unique sound, their own unique little flair. Now, again, this doesn't mean going crazy. This doesn't mean like a lot of echo or reverb or like big heavy effects, just subtleties. And these subtleties should almost give the impression that the material was recorded on different days, maybe in different studios, on different microphones, that sort of thing. The other thing, and this goes back to what you were saying, right? It can be very daunting to go from single track to multi-track editing. And I think for a lot of people, that's where the decision to hire a producer really comes in because it's a lot. And if your skills there are very new or you're unsure or whatever the case might be, just yeah, be aware of that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say to add on to that too, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but if we kind of going to just talk about general rules, I
mhm,
think, don't forget ever that your first and foremost job, right, is that they hear your voiceover and that the background music is not louder
mhm,
than your voiceover.
mhm,
However, your job is to make sure when we use this word mix, it's your job is to make sure in the end that your voiceover and the music sound as one, right? They sound like they are meant to be together. I can't tell you how many demos I've heard created by kind of DIY demos where you could just tell that the voiceover and the music, they don't sound like, you could tell they sound like two separate tracks as
mhm.
opposed to them sounding like one track. And a lot of what happens with that is volume.
Yeah.
It's, we can start kind of going into what we call, auto ducking or side chain compression. This idea of background music being adjusted,
Mhm,
the audio or the level, the dB level being adjusted based on you speaking, when you speak, when you don't speak.
mhm,
Also, what is too much, what is too
mhm.
little. Like they can be both ways. There can be way too much ducking, there can be too little ducking, there can, some of us get to a point where we end up doing it manually because we like to be able to control it more than the auto. But when you use auto, like when you use the AI or whatever the systems, you know what I mean? There's sensitivity settings that you have to set. These are things that really do, going again what Gabby said, why you kind of want to hire a professional sometimes too who does this stuff, who understands these things, or you're just willing to take a lot of time and trial and effort to learn it, which you can do both, right? I mean, you can do both.
I think something we haven't really discussed and that we probably should is when would you choose not to hire somebody and really not just because you're trying to save money, but when are
Mhm.
producers maybe not the most valuable? I think one thing to consider is foreign language because you're going to have a really hard time potentially finding a director or a producer that knows the language and that can, you know, participate in that process. And sometimes, right, voice actors just, no pun intended, we go off script, right? We create a demo that's very, very unique to us or very unique to a specific situation.
Hmm.
And when you're doing that, man, there are no rules, right? Like you have a certain amount of freedom to make those decisions. And so I do think that
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you even if you decide to hire a producer later, it's worth it to sort of lay out your own process initially and get a feel for what you want it to be and then bring a producer in. It's kind of like a songwriter, making sort of a rudimentary recording of something and then bringing it to a studio engineer to say, okay, now what can we do with this? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. And I think So I've always said, for example, but I think I over the years I've learned it's it's not 100% one way or the other. So what I mean by
Mm,
that is if so let's say, you're like, okay, I need to put an audiobook demo together. I know that from a production standpoint, in this particular demo, I'm not choosing to use background music. I'm not choosing to use sound effects.
yeah.
This is just voiceover, and it's more the formatting, my acting, making sure I'm, formatting, making sure there's spaces, making sure that it sounds, good. Um, and a lot of times before I'd be like, you don't need to hire someone to do that demo.
Yeah.
But I think what I've realized over the time is that you don't need to hire someone for the production aspect of that demo, but we cannot overlook the fact that the whole point of that demo then is your acting.
Yeah.
And if you, I always used to say, because, I did theater for a good portion of my life, that, you could, like, if you give me a stage and you put actors on that stage, I could build you an incredible set, right? I could build that, like, looks
Mm,
amazing, amazing costumes, the lights, background music, all these things, right?
mm,
It's like a cake, adds all this amazing icing and fluff and beauty to it, and it's
mm.
incredible, right? It can take something and elevate it, and you can win awards, and people just, it's eye candy, they love it. But at the heart of all of it is your acting.
Yeah.
And if the acting sucks, the rest of it really is just glorified window dressing, and
It's
people
true.
will walk away and be like, "That was amazing," but I didn't really think they did a really good job. Case in point, how many amazing Shakespeare productions have been put up? And I hate to say, I'm not calling out high school because I love high school because I've worked there for quite a while, or even college, and they put up amazing sets, amazing costumes, but the poor actors
Mm-hmm.
really struggled, and you're like, God, this is rough, right? Even though it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always used to say, if you take all of that away and you put a bunch of actors and just dress them in black and put them on a stage or even on the street,
Mm-hmm.
and they are phenomenal actors, you walk away being like, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it had nothing to do with it. Like, you didn't need the set, you didn't need all the costume, all the stuff there, but great acting on top of those other things added can then take something that's amazing and make it phenomenal.
I'm
But
gonna
do you
tell
know
you.
what I'm getting at this? You
Yeah.
have to have that acting.
I've had this conversation twice this week with different people. So I watched over the weekend a horror movie, because it's 'tis the season, and it was called Abigail, and I wasn't expecting much, right? The long story short is the movie itself not good, not great. Like so many
Mm,
elements of it, so many of the other actors, I was
right.
just like, oof. But this girl, this teenager who was playing the main character, my God, she outshined everything, every component of this movie. And I was watching this going, this kid's going to get an Oscar. Not for this, not for this, because there's too many other issues surrounding
Right.
it. But if she continues like this, holy crap. I mean, she
Hmm.
stole the entire movie in a way I've never seen before, and I was super impressed. I'm probably gonna go back and watch it again just to see her. Um, but it was amazing to me that she was sort of able to shine through, because sometimes we watch her like a B or a C movie and it's just all the same caliber, right? Yeah, she was the exception. It was truly remarkable.
It's
But yeah.
amazing how
Mhm.
really great acting can elevate something that is not very good in
Right?
general, right? I know that story they tell about, or what's her name, who said she was in the readings for Pirates of the Caribbean with Johnny Depp, and that on the page, the
Oh, Keira
script,
Knightley.
yeah, the script was written like just as a leading actor would read it as a leading actor,
Right.
right? There was none of what Depp brought, all that Jack Sparrow stuff
Mhm,
they brought to it. But
mhm.
can you imagine now without that? Like, that was that whole point. Now, I don't mean for us to diverge away from demos, but I think where the point here is, and even going back to what you were saying about, you creating something that's uniquely you. Some of the biggest successes I've had in my life is where I stepped out on a limb and said, I'm going to do it just my way. And it's so funny how the world then is like,
Can I just say
that's what we want.
I can envision you singing Frank Sinatra. I can see it. I can see Tony
Oh,
Anthony just lip syncing away, right? Just
I love it.
embracing
Yes.
Frank. I for sure. I get it. There
um,
look,
yeah.
there's something very powerful about that, and there is something very powerful about stepping outside of yourself and just going, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this because I want to."
And
And
the always the running joke, where I used to say the running joke in theater was is that to me, or was that that's the only place where being cool by not doing like something is not cool, right? Like where you're being like, oh, well, I don't want to go out on a limb, I don't want to commit,
right.
I don't want to do that. This is the place where that's not cool. We don't want to see
Yeah,
that. And I always make this thing with our voice actors. Remember, there people want to pay us to do the things that they feel they can't do.
yeah.
So we don't want to then do just the norm.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Now again, we're use your brain, but but again, that's it's interesting. Like what we were talking about yesterday about all the different trends and the
Yeah.
things that are happening. The biggest trend, we talked about conversation, but what in the end is conversational? It's you. It's being uniquely you, how you talk, how you act and interact, right? That's the whole thing, right? So really the trend is being ourselves
There's
confidently.
there's a level of honesty to it,
Hmm.
and what it acknowledges is that people aren't perfect, and when they speak, they're not so poised, and they're not so prepared, and they're not so driven by right, somebody else's agenda.
Hmm.
And so that changes things a lot, and it
Hmm.
forces the actor to go, "What? Whoa, I gotta do something here." Yeah, that's very different.
I was just funny. So getting back to what we as we were going to, because the acting part is the
It's
component is
okay,
very
it's
important.
important.
It's very important because I was saying, hiring someone, you might not feel like you need to hire like someone to do the full
Mhm.
production of a demo that might not need a full production, but you still need to make sure that you're working with someone who's helping you either with the acting or something, right? Because that's at the heart of it. But I was thinking, going back, I had talked briefly about sidechain compression, auto ducking, what these terms are. So
Technical.
ducking, all right, when we're talking about music or adding background music, okay, is just kind of what it says, right? We are ducking the volume below where we are speaking, right? Our volume of our voice. We're like lowering the volume, all right, so that we can hear our voice over the music, and then raising the volume back up when we're not speaking. What I found, so that's, and then when you add auto ducking in there, that's basically the computer, right, in your software, in your DAW, doing it for you. And there's usually these sensitivity settings. So what happens is you're on different
Mhm.
tracks, right, and you have a setting, say, I want it to be, you know, medium wise sensitive. So it tracks where you're talking, and when you're talking, it will lower the volume of the next track, which you set as the audio track, right? The background music track. This can, there's settings in this, and yes, it will do it automatically. You can tell now if anybody's ever listened to a demo where there's this big music going, and then the person starts to talk, and the music gets super quiet, and then when they stop talking and it gets really loud again, those people are heavily using auto ducking.
Yeah.
And I always think of auto ducking. And again, if someone else is out there using it, or you hired a professional, they're using it, I'm not talking bad about it. Okay, and everybody's different, and some people might be really good at it. I've done away with using it personally because I think it's very limiting, and it does that kind of thing I said, right? Because there are situations where you
Yeah.
don't want, because again, remember, our job is to make sure that it sounds like the music and your voice go together. We
I'm
don't
gonna
want, you know
tell
what
you
I mean?
something. I first of all, I do it all manually, right? When
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
producing something, I do it all manually. I didn't even know it had a name. I had no idea it had a name. We just back in the day, right? It was just part of mixing.
Right,
It's just
exactly.
I had no idea it had a name. That's
Yeah, so
even
that's the so again, auto ducking is different from sidechain compression
Oh, yeah.
because
That
that
I
auto ducking, right, is literally reducing the volume level of the background
yeah.
music. Okay. Ben, yes, Adobe Audition does have the ducking feature. It's on the window to your right, all right, that you set up. And you can go up in your window setting in the upper ribbon and bring it up. But the so that's auto ducking. Sidechain compression, okay, is another form, and it does it automatically,
Mhm.
where basically it compresses. We haven't talked about compression much, but it compresses the audio so that it compresses the audio, the background music audio. But it all does the same thing. It's
Mhm.
basically just lowering the volume of that a bit better.
Mhm.
People typically, if they do it auto,
Mhm.
they like side chain compression a little bit
Mhm.
better because it compresses the high ends. So yes, it does sound a little like it does make your voice pop out more, but it's not really reducing the volume as much as a straight up auto ducking does. You
I may have already talked about this once before, I don't remember, but one of the best pieces of advice I ever received from, an old producer who's, been doing it since analog was when you think you have your final mix, go ahead, turn your speakers way up, okay? And either walk out of the room or walk behind a wall and listen to the master. If you
you did. I remember you
still
talking
yeah,
about
if
this.
you can still hear your voice
Hmm.
clearly over all the other elements, then you're good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. So then, getting back to or saying what coming full circle, what Gabby was saying about her, she does it all manually. I do that now as well. I do it manually myself.
Yeah.
Each track, I just find that I like the control over each piece of it, and you can manipulate it the way you want to. And with the tools, even in Adobe Audition, it's very easy. For each track, it has the ability for you to raise each a volume section on any piece of the audio at any point. It's all
Mhm.
connected. You can create easily, just click and create key points. So it's very simple. Now again, that's Adobe Audition. I know every DAW is different, but yeah, but it's important to know those things because you need to understand what you are doing and why we are reducing volume in certain places, raising it in other places.
Mhm.
Also, you have to understand too that the way you mix your voice matters. The settings you use, because when you're doing a general voiceover, we typically, if we're submitting it to a place that typically has engineers on them, where they're
Mm.
usually wanting us to submit something raw. If we are submitting to maybe someone who doesn't have that, and they're looking for just making sure you've cleaned it up and it's just ready for them to use for something, we're submitting it edited and mastered. But we're not submitting it though like it's ready to go on a radio
Yeah.
channel that's not that loud, right? We're giving it to them with some headroom,
Mhm.
right? Which means we're not it's not at -1 or negative 2 like 0.5 dB. It's not as loud as
Mhm.
it can be. We have room, right? It's at -3, -4 dB. Point I'm trying to make is that we there's a lot to consider with all that we are doing
Yeah.
with this, and the more you know about it, the better you're going to be able to make the end product sound, because people are literally judging you on your acting, but also how professional it sounds,
It's
because they're
true.
expecting, even if they can't produce that, that's what they're basing. That's because remember, they're imagining in their minds, ooh, I'm gonna sound like that.
It's so
Right?
true.
Right? Am I right, Gabby?
Mhm.
That's what they're imagining. So we have to make sure it sounds like that.
Yeah. It's wild. And it really is. There's a lot. I mean, for people like you and me who have been doing it a really long time, there's elements that we don't even think about, right? They're so automatic. So for
Yeah, when
some
I start thinking about when I start talking about
right,
it, I'm like, man, there's so much here to
there
actually
is, there's so much. So I mean, I think we'll pick
yeah,
up the
love detail.
conversation about demos maybe one more time tomorrow, maybe talk about some cautionary stuff. But we're kind of wrapping it up, but
Mhm.
bring your demo questions if you're actively
Yes.
working on a demo. Now's the time to engage us for it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching today. Great session. I think we got a lot of good information out there. Make sure you're checking out. It's October, which put our new schedule out for the month of October for VO Journey Academy. It's amazing. Really excited. Last night there was character acting video game stuff
Mm-hmm.
with Bonnie. And tonight we've got a script workout. Tomorrow we've got
Nice.
launchpad sessions. So much amazing things going on. We'd love to have you at VO Journey Academy. You guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you all tomorrow.